Hey, it's the Political Kid, and today I'm going to be talking about what if Robert Taft won the nomination for president in 1952, beating Eisenhower, and how that would change American history. So, for some context, Robert Taft was the son of former President William Howard Taft, and also a senator, and the coincidentally, it was the time that this would take place was 40 years after the split within the Republican Party of 1912 with Robert Taft's father. Now, in this timeline, we'd have a very isolationist Republican instead of a internationalist, moderate Republican Eisenhower, and Robert Taft would not be as popular with a lot of Americans, considering that Eisenhower had a lot of support with World War II veterans and also a lot of moderate support. However, in this timeline, Robert Taft would not have that support. However, since the Democrats were very unpopular, and I could still see Taft getting someone who was a bit more moderate for the vice presidency, I could still see him winning, but not to the degree that Eisenhower did. And yeah, so there would be a lot of different things in a Robert Taft administration. First of all, the federal highway initiative would not be made, so that would be delayed for probably a decade. Also, there wouldn't be a lot of progress on civil rights for a while, considering that Eisenhower did a lot of moderate civil rights reforms that really helped. And in this timeline, it like the economy would not be as good. However, it would still be okay, considering that it was just a good time for Americans. However, it would not be as good as Robert Taft would refuse a lot of more liberal policies in economics. There would still be a recession in 1958, which would hurt the chances for the Republicans in 1960. Also, Robert Taft would probably win re-election in 1956. However, whoever runs for the Republicans in 1960 would still probably lose. I could see someone like Richard Nixon running, as even though he wasn't vice president, he was still very popular, and maybe I could see Nelson Rockefeller as his vice president nominee, but I could still see John F. Kennedy running, so that wouldn't be really much of a difference. However, I think that Nixon would lose by a little bit more, probably losing California, so it wouldn't be like as close as it was in our timeline, but it would still divide America just in general. I could still see a lot of Americans being more isolationists in this timeline, so I could see John F. Kennedy not sending as much support to South Vietnam. However, he would still pretty much do the same thing he did in our timeline. The federal highway would probably be built in the John F. Kennedy presidency, which would definitely help his approval numbers. Actually, like even after the Civil Rights Act would still be delayed until Lyndon Johnson was president after the assassination of JFK. The Cuban Missile Crisis would still happen, and LBJ would definitely still put a lot of troops into Vietnam. Maybe not as many, since the American public would be a little bit more isolationist because of the moderately popular presidency of Robert Taft. Now, I could definitely still see Hubert Humphrey running. However, he would lose. He would lose, but I could see Republicans nominating somebody different. I could see them running George Romney, as Nixon would be not as popular, considering that he lost by a pretty significant margin in 1960. And the George Romney presidency would probably pull out troops more than Nixon did, and probably not go into detente as they did in our timeline. He'd probably still win in 1972, but with less support than Nixon did. In 1976, there would probably be no Watergate, and if it did happen, George Romney would not try to cover it up, I don't think, and so he would not be impeached. And so, depending on who was the vice president, I don't. I mean, it went. The Republicans would still probably win. I could definitely see Ronald Reagan running in 1976 and beating out other contenders within the Republican Party and probably beating them. And Jimmy Carter would probably still run in this timeline. So we'd have a 4 years earlier Reagan v. Carter, and Reagan would probably win. So that's about it for the Republicans, as their popularity was waning, and with the oil crisis and the Iran hostage crisis, although Ronald Reagan would probably be more popular than Jimmy Carter, he would probably lose a 1980 election towards Ted Kennedy. I could see Ted Kennedy winning re-election. And the 80s, instead of being a conservative 80s, it would be a liberal 80s. In 1988, I could see Mario Cuomo winning. In 1992, I could see maybe Bob Dole winning. However, it wouldn't be as much as Clinton did win in 1992, since the Democrats would be a little bit more popular since of their more interventionist economic policies. In 1996, I could see Bob Dole winning re-election. In 2000, I could see John McCain winning. In 2004, I could see John McCain winning re-election. In 2008, I could see Barack Obama winning. However, there would be less support. However, I mean, he wouldn't win as much. However, he'd still be pretty popular. Probably win re-election with Joe Biden as his running mate. In 2016, I could see Marco Rubio as the Republicans went from a moderate stances in the 50s to a more conservative stances in the current decades. But in this timeline, they would go from more conservative policies in the 50s, 60s, and 70s to a more moderate policies in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. So I could definitely see Marco Rubio, or Marco Rubio would probably win the Republican nomination, probably win 2016. I feel that Joe Biden wouldn't win as much. I could see Marco Rubio winning states like Arizona and Georgia. However, Joe Biden would still probably win the 2020 election. And I'm pretty sure Kamala Harris would still be the vice president, so I could see Kamala Harris still losing to maybe. I don't think Marco Rubio would try to run in 2024. However, whoever ran in 2024 would definitely have a real shot, and I could see Ron DeSantis running and then winning the 2024 election. Overall, it changes the Republican Party overall, because it makes them more isolationist to more internationalist, instead of our own timeline where they were more internationalist from the beginning, like of the 50s because of Eisenhower, to a more isolationist policy that we have today. So every election matters. I hope that you always be in touch with politics, and if you have a friend or family members that are not interested in politics, just always tell them that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to change history. So even though you're just one vote, it still matters. So I hope you all vote in midterms and presidential elections, and I hope you have a good day. And please like and subscribe.